So, hi guys, welcome to Director's Notes.
Thank,
Hello. Thanks for
thank you,
having
thank
me.
you, thank you.
You're welcome. So, we met very briefly at London Film Festival where you guys had your world premiere.
Yeah.
We
So,
did.
please introduce yourselves and your film.
So I am Sophie Compton, one of the half of the director's team of Holloway, which is a film about six women who had all been previously incarcerated in the biggest women's prison in Europe, Holloway Prison, which was in central London. And we got access to the prison when it was empty and abandoned. To facilitate these six women to come back for a women's circle and really explore, will really come together in sisterhood and reclaim their narrative, reclaim the space, come back with agency to a place where they'd previously been kind of stripped of agency and stripped of identity. But really then the film, what unfolds is a kind of examination of the root causes of female incarceration, and really begs the question, should so many women be in prison? Is that the right place? You know, women are going to prison to find safety, to find sanctuary, and we think that that's actually so shocking and such a shocking indictment on our societal structures, and also what comes out is a lot of joy and laughter and sisterhood.
Nice.
Yeah.
See?
And I'm Daisy-May Hudson, the other half of our beautiful directing duo.
How did you two come together to be working on this?
Soph sent an email about her, this beautiful project that she had in mind. And I've always felt really, really passionate about prisons. Um, because, yeah, I guess having my own lived experience of being homeless and kind of other ways that I resonate with the story, I've really found prisons to be this place where we have um, yeah, the place in society where we don't want to look of all the things that are really, really important for us to see and face, which is that we ultimately lock up people that are experiencing extreme trauma or recovering from extreme trauma with no space, no compassion, no safety to be able to actually face that. And we just say, like, you're wrong, you're bad, you need to change your ways. It's a system based on punishment. And it doesn't work. Like, it clearly doesn't work. The reoffending rate show it doesn't work. How deeply affected people come out and feel, and the level of shame and guilt, is not a place that enables people to to find a new path in a way that is held in like love. And I think when Soph approached with this idea and I said, would you be interested in co-directing? It just felt like the stars all aligned and it just felt like the right thing. And it honestly has been incredible to work together as a team, like as a real, it's a film about sisterhood made by sisterhood. And that felt really, really powerful because um we've spoken about this before, but like documentary or film in general has this like quite top down, like hierarchical way of working. And when you co-direct, suddenly like that goes, you have to, it becomes horizontal. It becomes horizontal in like the way that we worked with our other incredible collaborators, like our editor, Stella Heathkear, and the producers, Alice Hughes. I should do full name shout outs. Alice Hughes, Polly Creed, and Claire O'Neill.
Well
Um,
done.
and thank you. And also our contributors, they were our collaborators and we worked with a co-creation model. And so everything about our way of working was how to bring this horizontal feeling and truth to working together. And so, yeah, it's just been a dream.
Yeah. And I
Not
mean,
easy, not easy, but it's a dream. Like, unpacking like the ways that so when we say co-creation, what is the truth of that, and like how you can't just say it, you actually have to mean it, and you have to show up with that in every aspect of it, and like reconsider power dynamics and like how transparent you're being about like the whole process. So yeah, it was amazing because it makes you have such a high level of self-reflection about everything and like when you say something, do you actually mean it? And if you don't, then our beautiful contributors called us out on it, and it made for a much better film because of that.
Yeah. Yeah, that honesty certainly comes through. And talking about sort of the co-creators, how did you look at finding the right women to have in the film and, their stories? Because they're incredible. They're inspiring, all of them.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. They are such incredible human beings, and I feel so privileged to have got to know them as deeply as we have. In a way, the group kind of built itself because we actually spent quite a long time. We spent like a year from when we did put the call out to when we were able to start shooting. And in that time, we actually heard from over 30 women who were interested in participating. Between that and another project that we did. But basically we realized right from the off that we weren't going to be, there was a huge number of people whose lives have been touched by Holloway, who've been in Holloway, who wanted to go back. Obviously there are probably also many that wouldn't want to do that, and that completely, I respect that decision as well. But it was really clear with each of those 6 women that we felt like there was a real bond of trust. And, it's important to us that there was a range of ages, a range of races, a range of class backgrounds, but also like, it felt important that it wasn't, not that anyone's process or journey is ever done. We're all still learning and we're all still processing the impacts of our childhood and all of our life experiences. But also we wanted to work with women that we felt were ready to take on such a huge challenge and such a difficult experience as going back. We knew it would be confronting and potentially triggering, but we were willing to hold with that. But we needed to work with people that we felt were able to do that it wouldn't be too dangerous, but also that maybe had something to gain from the process as well. So yeah, it happened very organically, and it happened because we just connected and we built that trust with these 6 individuals, and then it just became kind of inevitable and impossible not to, support them to tell their story in the best way we could.
Yeah. And I mean, I know this was the sort of first question I fired at you at the afternoon tea, but it's still something that resonates with me. It's your camera work. Is you brought us into that circle. We were sat with all of those moments. So what setups did you have, and with the team and everyone there?
So we had 2 camera operators, which included our cinematographer, and we had thought about a lot about logistics of, the workshops themselves were 2 blocks of 2 hours, and how to cover that, and there's like the I guess it's because it's so deeply about this circle of women and how they affect each other, and it's the glances between them, and it's the what is uncovered through the mirror of listening to each other's story, and what can we learn about ourselves. So making sure that we just had like as much coverage as possible, which I'm sure, well, we know that Stella, our editor, would have craved even more, even more. But the fact that we had, these 2 camera teams, and then we also, when we were, I guess the other important part is initially we hadn't discussed like the film language with our contributors, like where do they feel comfortable, where is the camera comfortable in the circle, what is the distance, like it was just something like most documentaries that just becomes a given. But when in halfway through the film, um, that is questioned, and then the cameras take a step back and the film language changes because of that. So then we started to work with like zoom lenses rather than being able to like be in the circle and be with the women. But people have said that even, or there's been a few people that said like that's also quite powerful to see that your relationship to the contributors change through the actual way that they're filmed, and knowing that something's on their terms and not on ours.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's huge. And was that worrying for you both, sort of on set, on production, that then you had to push back and change things?
Um, I think in terms of like the film language, no, because we our contributors were the priority, and they always have been. And it's unusual in a film. That's quite rare, actually. And I
Yeah.
think that that's one of the reasons why documentaries can be very extractive. There have been several points in the process, even towards the end of the edit, where there were moments when we had to be really open, and the truth of our integrity was that we had to say, if the contributors are not happy with this cut, if the contributors are not happy with the film is not going out. You know, we will sacrifice the work that we've put in and the investment that we've received if we're going to, if we will not try and persuade or push people into doing something that they don't want to do. Having said that, we're proud, and we do believe that the dynamic and the trust was strong enough that we were able to also express our needs as filmmakers. And so, you know, the one thing that we'd asked for was that the cameras stay within that workshop space, but also we knew that that served the intentions of all of those 6 women, because they'd all come in not just to go through a personal internal process, but also to share stories for the benefit of others. And they all have this incredible, generous activist spirit, and they want to be a beacon of hope for other women in a way that they really wished that they could have had at that time when they were struggling. But I think what was, you know, of course, in the moment when the process was being questioned and kind of like the veil is pulled, for the film audience, like the veil is pulled and you go behind the curtain, you know, for us in that moment, it was, there are things coming up here that need to be addressed. Like, how can we be as honest, accountable, truthful, and just meet that where it's at? And you know, for me, there are so many interpretations of that moment, and one of them that always has resonated for me, and because I was standing in that circle, really did resonate, was this feeling of, we're going deeper than we expected, and I need to test the boundaries to make sure that I'm safe to do so, because this process is traveling me more into more intimate places than I anticipated. So in order to feel safe to go there, I need to test, even though we'd spent so long building a relationship and building trust and going through, why do you want to be here? What do you want to get out of this? You know, all of that work had done. It was a test of that in the moment. And so it was, you know, will we be listened to? And also, in my experience, in that moment, the cameras very much could have gone off. You know, that was really on the table. But and of course, in a film, you have to edit, you know, a long conversation down to a much shorter conversation. But it was an hour of us really all grappling with, what do we actually want? What do we actually need? But in terms of the film language, I think that because we already knew that we wanted to, like, be mobile, shoot dirty, focus on character and story as the, like, main priority, and the incredible, you know, beautiful faces of our contributors. Yeah, we already had zoom lenses, and so actually it was it wasn't too challenging to move out of the circle. The thing that was more challenging to our production process and how we shot the film was the fact that we shot it in the middle of the pandemic, and was basically lost like half of our crew due to people being pinged. So the camera operators changed about 4 times over the course of the shoot.
Yeah, I think that's something people have got a lot more used to since the pandemic, is sort of just rolling with these punches. And you're like, okay, this is changing, this is going to change.
Yeah. And this film has been a lesson in surrender and rolling with the punches. But that's, you know, that's like been such a beautiful lesson for us. And yeah, it's really challenged us as filmmakers to not be as attached and kind of, I don't know, there's a real energy of like pushing and grasping and pulling that can sometimes occur in documentary production. And we were not able to act like that, because we would have been then holding, what we were holding was too valuable, but also, you know, our contributors deserved a lot better than that. So yeah, we've had to learn that lesson, and it's been a really, really valuable one as a filmmaker, I think.
Yeah. And I mean, you mentioned your editor, and if I'm not wrong, she also edited a documentary which I love, The Taste of Mango.
Yeah.
I love that film. I was looking and I was like, oh. And I mean, you both told me that you sat through 40 hours.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's an intense experience.
It was intense, but like t totally necessary. I mean, I do kind of do that with other films as well, as to like to watch everything through, because you need it like in your bones. And you need to, because especially with, I've just come from making a fiction and I'd forgotten what it was like to make a documentary, and you literally create the whole thing all over again, or like you're finding the story like in the edit from the rushes. Um, and I guess like, we had a natural like linear narrative because it was filmed over 5 days in a workshop. So we knew those were like the broad brush strokes, but essentially like working with six contributors, that is it's a complete ensemble. Like we went through a stage where we tried to hang the film off like different contributors, or like we're curious at like what would happen if certain people took more of a forefront, and it just didn't work. Like that wasn't what the women wanted, it wasn't what the film wanted. The film wanted it to be about six women
Yeah.
and the circle of sisterhood. And so also what was amazing was watching all of those rushes and just responding to like what are the bits that we sit and bawl our eyes out about, or like that feel so illuminating that you're like, oh my gosh, everyone needs to see this. We were having, awakenings, deep soul awakenings when we were watching the rushes, just because we were like, our mum needs to see this, our sister needs to see this. And there's some magic that happens that even though, the women's experiences, they've experienced incarceration, their stories and their contexts are very universal, in different ways. Like a lot of people can resonate to different parts of their story in different ways. And that's what we saw when we were watching the rushes, is like, how do we just collect those like universal moments of like, this could be anyone, like this is me. And also what was super important for the women, and was one of their intentions, was context, and like giving as much context to their stories as possible. Because when we think about like people that have been to prison, it's usually very reductive narratives or like stereotypes, and how can we give as much, yeah, fullness and wholeness to what it means to be a woman. And Stella was just like, so we couldn't have made the film without her. Genuinely, we couldn't have made the film, because there was stuff, it's not been an easy journey to get it made, and like to be able to, yeah, like financially get it made. And she just was so with us on the journey. She was like one of the, not just an editor for hire, she is like core team member. It's her film, and she gave so much. And yeah, and it's amazing because of that like level of passion and compassion and understanding from her as well.
Yeah. And I mean that is felt. And I think, you'd both agree you watched films and you feel when there's that level of care and sort of, yeah, just desire for it to be as good as it possibly is.
Mm.
And I wanted to ask you, so I'm going to read this. So on your website, so it's co-created model with participants and trauma-informed production.
Yeah.
And I fucking love it, and we need more of it.
Yes.
So what's it like? Because you're breaking boundaries, you're changing things, you're trying to pave a new way for documentaries to be made, which they all should be.
Yeah, I mean, we had to basically break any structure that we came apart, or hierarchy. Daisy-May's already talked about a kind of horizontal model,
Mm.
and a not an extractive model. Like for us, the absolute core of trauma-informed work is giving choice and agency, and like that's what true collaboration is. And so, and also just putting at the heart of it the needs of the contributors, not the needs of the film. And the film can be part of that because that's a goal that we all share.
Yeah.
But, like if we're speaking to, like even now it's continuing, like even now when we're speaking to press, if there are certain, things that we're not prepared to disclose about, or talk about, because we don't want to frame our contributors in a certain way, or we don't think that we're aware of how the media can be stigmatizing and very stereotyping when talking about women who've been in prison. So we will always say, like, we will not do this piece, we will can this piece if we think it's going to be shafting you, for example. And that's just like one small recent example. And in the edit process, what that meant was actually opening up the film at an early stage for feedback. And it was such an incredible, rewarding, sometimes hair-raising, sometimes terrifying, sometimes challenging, but like process that massively enriched the film. Because the other thing is that like with documentary participants, they're not only, you know, incredibly courageous in sharing their story, they're also the experts on the subject matter. And of course, the filmmakers will come, you know, we can see things sometimes in terms of a character arc, and some, you know, there are things that we can see that perhaps you might not be able to see if you are the person in that story. And there are ways that we want to craft the story because there are things that are important to us to communicate to an audience. But fundamentally, the people that know this subject matter the best, on that gut level of this just doesn't feel quite right, this is just a little bit too far, this is too deep, this is a part of me that is too intimate, you know, that's where the contributors like insight is so central. And there were some things that it was interesting because quite a lot of the feedback that came back, we were like, we just got it. We were like, yeah, of course that story is too much or not enough, or of course that bit doesn't make sense. So it was mostly really enriching, but there were one or two times where the feedback came back and we didn't get it. And we thought, oh God, how are we gonna accommodate this, or what are we gonna do? And then we went into the film and we did what had been requested and we watched it through and we were like, oh my God, this is exactly what the film needed. It needed more joy, it needed more lightness, it needed a bit of sisterhood here, or whatever it may be. Yeah, so that process has been, yeah, incredibly, incredibly rewarding all the way through. And one final thing is that we also got trauma-informed practice training for like all of our cast and crew, and thought, you know, so this also was about the level of care and thought that went into how constructed the shoot. So thinking through like working with an all-female team, like being really, you know, working with people that we really trust, that we know is going to create like a safe space, how we, you know, prioritize again the needs of the women in the circle over the norms of documentary where we want to cut and the shot's not working, we need to fix the light. Like all of that stuff was secondary. So we had to be really smart and kind of clever as a team and plan everything, you know, really intently before in order to do that.
Yeah. And this should be how it is. It's like every set should have an intimacy coordinator if they've got any kind of those kind of scenes. And all documentaries should have these practices in place. So I really commend you for sort of doing this and bringing it up.
Yeah,
but
and
also, well, just the number of people that told us like you can't really make a film about 6 contributors. Like that's not people don't connect 6 main characters, and we, you know, there were so many different layers of institutional kind of thinking that we had to just ignore basically.
Yeah, and I was just going to say that like trauma-informed working is acknowledging that like everyone has a story, and like a behavior or the way that someone meets you like in face value is a reference point of every other thing that they've ever experienced, and all the pain and all the suffering, and that we can always read someone's behavior or the way that someone is experiencing something within that fact that there is always a context. And how can you, when someone is behaving in a certain way, and this isn't just like, I'm not talking only filmmaker to contributor, but filmmaker to filmmaker, filmmaker to like other members in your team, like when you're looking at things within that trauma-informed lens, it means that you can like connect to people in such a deeper, more vulnerable and honest way, that means that you can be accountable for your behaviors in a way that you can't if you're just acting from like, ugh, you know, it's like, how do I bring myself, how does the fact that there is this space created mean that I can self-reflect, that I can see that I may have reacted from a certain way, and then have an honest conversation with someone and go, do you know what, I was feeling this. And it sounds like it's laborious, or that, you know, I know some people get a bit like eye rolly about emotions, but like we are human beings and this is the way that we are. So we have to like re-engage or like rethink about how we're actually engaging with our humanity and our messiness on set. And I think that also means that then we don't let other behaviors which are not kind on set get like that people can get away with them because there's a level of self-reflection or accountability. So I think this is the way that things need to be, and that you know the ripple effect is like one, because I worked on my previous film was in a same way. And once someone experiences what it means to feel held or in safety, then they're kind of what's the word? Like that's what they want from their next film set and their
Yeah.
next film set and their next film set. And so it like changes and changes because people start to see that something else is possible.
Yeah.
Yeah. One other thing as well is that one of the best pieces of advice that we were given was that, you know, if you are expecting people to be incredibly vulnerable, then you have no right to pretend that you're not also vulnerable. And that doesn't mean like taking up too much space and talking about all of the things that you're finding difficult in the world in the middle of an interview, for example. But this is a film which both me and Daisy May in different ways resonate with a lot of the subject matter in very personal, very acute ways.
Mm.
And, you know, that's one of those are that's some of the context behind why we decided to tell this story or why we felt so passionate about it. And there were times where some of that came up and we felt emotional. I think once again, this was the beauty of having both of us, is that if one of us, you know, actually just was in our feels and needed to take some time, then the other one could kind of take the baton of, you know, holding the space. But that is, you know, that is also part of holding the space, like being truthful and being expressing who you are. And I think that that's part of the reason why keeping in that conversation around, you know, do we trust and should we keep the cameras on in the film was so important, because again, it's that like expression of vulnerability on the side of the filmmakers as well, which so often things are hidden, swept under the carpet. Film directors are often considered, you know, they need to pretend to be like all-seeing, all-knowing, like robots basically, and that's not human, and that actually can create some, I think it can create some really quite abusive practices as well, because you're masking and I think it also can not lead to real trust with your contributors. So I think that it's also counterproductive from the point of getting a good film. But that felt quite radical to me in terms of, you know, past professional experiences, being able to show up so fully as a human being as well as, you know, my role on the project.
Yeah. I mean, it's going to be challenging in a brilliant way for both of you moving forward, because you're like, we've done this, we know it works, so this is how we're going to do it.
Well, exactly. I mean, that's the beauty of having a truly independent production.
Yeah.
The challenge is sometimes it takes a very long time to get financing,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
you're constantly looking at the thinking, are we ever going to get paid? But that's the beauty of it. But it also, I think these ways of working need to be brought into the main, you know, all levels of the industry. And to some extent they are, but I also think that as a director, you know, we are very privileged in the fact that we can help institute some of those norms and practices in the project that we work on. So we have that responsibility as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just to say, like, the film that I just worked on, Lollipop, was, you know, it was fully supported by the BBC to carry those practices. It just takes extra thinking, extra work, extra, I'm sure extra money, but I didn't see that layer in the budget. But just like it takes like Soph says, because these things, you know, it's about your leadership and what values are you taking to where you work, and what values do you want to see trickled down to, not down, across, trickled across, in the way that you're working. And if you hold that dear in your heart, you will be supported, but you just have to, you know, acknowledge that it's something that's really important for you and kind of non-negotiable.
Absolutely. Okay, my final quick question. How have you found reactions at the festival? Because obviously it was the big sort of premiere, and that's huge.
It's been so beautiful. It's been very emotional.
Yeah.
There have been a lot of tears. We also
Yeah.
had an unbelievably raucous premiere with a lot of laughter as well. And kind of, yeah, it felt very alive. And that was really special with many of the contributors there as well, like bringing the energy.
Yeah.
But I think that this film, like, really is one that, you know, for the people it touches, and it seems like that is, you know, luckily so far lots of people, it touches very deep. And what I'm kind of proud of is that the people that just, I don't know, honor it in the biggest way are people that have lived experiences. And there's a real recognition of its truth, from people that have experienced any of the themes in the film, which is probably quite a lot of people, especially most women. Yeah, I think with independent films, it is always, there are always challenges as well, because you need to keep working to get exposure, to get people to come down, to get people to pay attention. But I have like utmost faith that we will, because the kind of, we feel very proud of like the way that the word of mouth is, yeah, spreading out, and that like grassroots energy is, yeah, what we dreamed of, really.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, just that, I guess the depth that people are responding is the thing that is particularly touching, like just how it makes people feel something, that touch something within themselves that maybe they've felt too scared to touch, or that they've not had the space to touch, and that this film can kind of be a catalyst of something new or shifting within them. And that feels like, again, very beautiful, because that's how change happens, you know. It's like when people are moved, they will really question whether this is the way things should be, or is there something new. And that's definitely what we, are feeling and calling for with this film.
Yeah. I mean, I've throughout the festival, I was actually on a podcast the other day talking about this. After some films, I've had to go and have what I'm now calling a tactical cry.
In
So,
the
because I'm just so overwhelmed, so I just need to go into the toilet and have a cry and get it out. And yours was one of them. I had to go out and I had to just have a tactical cry. And then I came out and I saw someone I knew, and they were like, "Are you all right?" And I was like, "It's a tactical cry." Um, and it's what you need. And by making people have tactical cries, that's what's going to make people talk about the film, and that's what's going to expand the audience, and that's what's going to open people's eyes up. And I'm
you,
just so impressed by both of you.
question, do you do your tactical cry in front of people, or do you hide?
So normally I'm very open, but during the film festival, because I was there sort of with my professional hat on, it was in the toilets. But in normal everyday life, it's wherever I want.
We
Yeah.
encourage blubbing everywhere, because it changes the, like, I guess, the acceptability of emotions, and like where you can do it. We did it,
Yeah.
I did it on stage. Soph did it somewhere else at the party.
Oh yeah, no, I've been in another film festival, and I was presenting. It was a women only strand that I just started, and as I was presenting it, I like choked up, and I was like, right, just needed to have a little cry, and that was just on stage. Sometimes you have to, but with the festival, I just found, because then I was going out, and then you see people, I was like, right, go cry, and then you can come out and be like badass.
I think it's great. I think it's great.
Love
Yeah.
it.
Well, guys,
Oh,
thank you
well,
so much. I'm so glad we got a full of time to have a full chat.
Thank you so
thank you
much for
so
having
much.
us.